To begin the journey toward thinking like a billionaire, even when your bank account says otherwise, you must first rewire your mindset entirely. Because the biggest difference between billionaires and everyone else isn't their net worth, it's the way they perceive reality, possibility, and themselves. Most people see the world as a fixed game where the rules are set by someone else, but billionaires view life as a customizable adventure, a sandbox where they can invent the rules, break limits, and design outcomes, and that bold sense of creative control is where everything begins. So before you consider investments, business ventures, or financial strategies, you must understand that the real currency of the ultra-successful isn't just money, it's vision, belief, and clarity of purpose. And in that spirit, step 1 is to identify the mental operating system you're currently running on, because most people unconsciously inherit limiting beliefs about money, power, and success from their environment, family, or culture. Beliefs like money is the root of all evil, rich people are greedy, or I have to trade time for money. And without confronting and rewriting these scripts, even the best financial advice will fail to stick. Billionaires don't just hustle harder, they think differently. They act on principles that often seem counterintuitive to the average person, like seeing failure as tuition, using time as a multiplier instead of a constraint, and betting on asymmetric opportunities where the potential upside dwarfs the downside. And this mindset transformation starts with radical responsibility, which means that no matter your circumstances, whether you're broke, in debt, or starting from zero, you accept full ownership of your choices, your reactions, and your future, because billionaires never blame the market, the government, or luck. They ask better questions like, what advantage can I create here? Or what skill can I build that would make me valuable in any economy? And this is not about toxic positivity or delusion, but about adopting a bias for agency, a mental habit of looking for leverage in places others see dead ends. Consider Elon Musk, who was laughed at for investing in rockets and electric cars but saw opportunity where others saw risk, or Sarah Blakely, who created Spanx with $5,000 in savings and zero fashion experience but had unshakable conviction in solving a problem she deeply understood. What they have in common is that they don't wait for permission, they create value by solving problems and then amplify that value through scalable systems. And even if you're working a 9-to-5 right now or scraping by paycheck to paycheck, the same thinking applies. Start identifying patterns, problems, and pain points that people experience around you, and ask yourself, how can I be the person who solves this in a way that scales? Because billionaires are problem solvers at scale. They don't trade time for money, they build machines that make money while they sleep, and that doesn't mean you have to start the next Apple or Amazon. It means you begin developing a skill, idea, or offer that can be productized, digitized, or distributed beyond your immediate circle. And before you think this is too far-fetched, remember that every billionaire was once broke, scared, or underestimated, but what separated them was mental resilience, a relentless drive to learn, and an obsession with value creation. So if you want to start thinking like a billionaire, spend more time designing your internal architecture than checking your external circumstances. Install a daily habit of reading books written by or about billionaires, listen to interviews, observe their thinking patterns, their language, their frameworks, and more importantly, start tracking your own thoughts. Every time you say, I can't, ask, why not me? Every time you think, I need more money, ask, how can I create more value? Because the secret is not in chasing money, but in becoming the type of person to whom money naturally flows because you solve big enough problems with excellence. Billionaires see money as a byproduct of impact, not the end goal, and once you internalize that wealth is a reflection of value delivered at scale, your attention shifts from scarcity to creativity, from hustle to leverage, and that's where the real transformation begins. Another critical shift is how you perceive time. While most people treat time as a resource to be managed or endured, billionaires treat it as their most precious asset, ruthlessly protecting it from distractions and allocating it toward high-leverage activities that move the needle. So the first practical step you can take, even if you're broke, is to conduct a time audit. How are you spending your hours, and are those hours compounding into skills, systems, or strategies that could eventually pay you back tenfold? If not, start redirecting just 1 hour per day toward building something long-term, Whether it's learning a high-income skill, creating content, starting a digital product, or networking with like-minded thinkers, that single hour becomes your billionaire seed. And the key is consistency, because billionaires play long games. They don't need overnight wins, they just need momentum in the right direction. This also brings us to emotional mastery. The ultra-successful are able to regulate their emotions not because they're robots, but because they know that reacting emotionally to setbacks kills progress, while responding strategically accelerates it. So train yourself to remain calm under pressure, to find signal in the noise, and to avoid drama, because every hour spent complaining, gossiping, or doom-scrolling is an hour stolen from your future empire. And instead of feeding your mind with junk, nourish it with books on business, psychology, and investing. Books like The Psychology of Money, Principles by Ray Dalio, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, and biographies of Rockefeller, Carnegie, Oprah, and Jobs, because the more you expose yourself to billionaire blueprints, the more you'll notice the patterns they all share. Obsessive learning, calculated risk-taking, extreme focus, delayed gratification, and an unshakable belief in their mission, even when no one else sees it. And perhaps the most overlooked mindset trait of billionaires is this: they embrace boredom. They fall in love with the unsexy repetition of practice, the daily grind of showing up, and while the masses chase dopamine, they chase discipline, because they know that mastery is built in silence, not in noise. So if you truly want to think like a billionaire, start doing the things most people avoid. Say no more often, be okay with being misunderstood, make long-term bets, build your unique edge, and invest in your mind like it's your most valuable real estate, because it is. And even when your environment is filled with scarcity, negativity, or mediocrity, protect your vision with everything you have, because the first person you must convince is yourself. And once your internal beliefs become stronger than your external conditions, the world will begin to mirror your mindset back to you, through opportunities, connections, and breakthroughs that once seemed impossible, but now feel inevitable. To begin the journey toward thinking like a billionaire, even when your bank account says otherwise, you must first rewire your mindset entirely. Because the biggest difference between billionaires and everyone else isn't their net worth, it's the way they perceive reality, possibility, and themselves. Most people see the world as a fixed game where the rules are set by someone else, but billionaires view life as a customizable adventure, a sandbox where they can invent the rules, break limits, and design outcomes, and that bold sense of creative control is where everything begins. So before you consider investments, business ventures, or financial strategies, you must understand that the real currency of the ultra-successful isn't just money, it's vision, belief, and clarity of purpose. And in that spirit, step 1 is to identify the mental operating system you're currently running on, because most people unconsciously inherit limiting beliefs about money, power, and success from their environment, family, or culture. Beliefs like money is the root of all evil, rich people are greedy, or I have to trade time for money. And without confronting and rewriting these scripts, even the best financial advice will fail to stick. Billionaires don't just hustle harder, they think differently. They act on principles that often seem counterintuitive to the average person, like seeing failure as tuition, using time as a multiplier instead of a constraint, and betting on asymmetric opportunities where the potential upside dwarfs the downside. And this mindset transformation starts with radical responsibility, which means that no matter your circumstances, whether you're broke, in debt, or starting from zero, you accept full ownership of your choices, your reactions, and your future, because billionaires never blame the market, the government, or luck. They ask better questions like, what advantage can I create here? Or what skill can I build that would make me valuable in any economy? And this is not about toxic positivity or delusion, but about adopting a bias for agency, a mental habit of looking for leverage in places others see dead ends. Consider Elon Musk, who was laughed at for investing in rockets and electric cars but saw opportunity where others saw risk, or Sarah Blakely, who created Spanx with $5,000 in savings and zero fashion experience but had unshakable conviction in solving a problem she deeply understood. What they have in common is that they don't wait for permission, they create value by solving problems and then amplify that value through scalable systems. And even if you're working a 9 to 5 right now or scraping by paycheck to paycheck, the same thinking applies. Start identifying patterns, problems, and pain points that people experience around you, and ask yourself, how can I be the person who solves this in a way that scales? Because billionaires are problem solvers at scale, they don't trade time for money, they build machines that make money while they sleep, and that doesn't mean you have to start the next Apple or Amazon. It means you begin developing a skill, idea, or offer that can be productized, digitized, or distributed beyond your immediate circle. And before you think this is too far-fetched, remember that every billionaire was once broke, scared, or underestimated, but what separated them was mental resilience, a relentless drive to learn, and an obsession with value creation. So if you want to start thinking like a billionaire, spend more time designing your internal architecture than checking your external circumstances. Install a daily habit of reading books written by or about billionaires, listen to interviews, observe their thinking patterns, their language, their frameworks, and more importantly, start tracking your own thoughts. Every time you say, I can't, ask, why not me? Every time you think, I need more money, ask, how can I create more value? Because the secret is not in chasing money, but in becoming the type of person to whom money naturally flows because you solve big enough problems with excellence. Billionaires see money as a byproduct of impact, not the end goal, and once you internalize that wealth is a reflection of value delivered at scale, your attention shifts from scarcity to creativity, from hustle to leverage, and that's where the real transformation begins. Another critical shift is how you perceive time. While most people treat time as a resource to be managed or endured, billionaires treat it as their most precious asset, ruthlessly protecting it from distractions and allocating it toward high-leverage activities that move the needle. So the first practical step you can take, even if you're broke, is to conduct a time audit. How are you spending your hours, and are those hours compounding into skills, systems, or strategies that could eventually pay you back tenfold? If not, start redirecting just 1 hour per day toward building something long-term, whether it's learning a high-income skill, creating content, starting a digital product, or networking with like-minded thinkers. That single hour becomes your billionaire seed, and the key is consistency because billionaires play long games. They don't need overnight wins, they just need momentum in the right direction. This also brings us to emotional mastery. The ultra-successful are able to regulate their emotions not because they're robots, but because they know that reacting emotionally to setbacks kills progress, while responding strategically accelerates it. So train yourself to remain calm under pressure, to find signal in the noise, and to avoid drama, because every hour spent complaining, gossiping, or doom-scrolling is an hour stolen from your future empire. And instead of feeding your mind with junk, nourish it with books on business, psychology, and investing. Books like The Psychology of Money, Principles by Ray Dalio, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, and biographies of Rockefeller, Carnegie, Oprah, and Jobs, because the more you expose yourself to billionaire blueprints, the more you'll notice the patterns they all share. Obsessive learning, calculated risk-taking, extreme focus, delayed gratification, and an unshakable belief in their mission. Even when no one else sees it, and perhaps the most overlooked mindset trait of billionaires is this. They embrace boredom, they fall in love with the unsexy repetition of practice, the daily grind of showing up, and while the masses chase dopamine, they chase discipline because they know that mastery is built in silence, not in noise. So if you truly want to think like a billionaire, start doing the things most people avoid. Say no more often, be okay with being misunderstood, make long-term bets, build your unique edge, and invest in your mind like it's your most valuable real estate because it is, and even when your environment is filled with scarcity, negativity, or mediocrity, protect your vision with everything you have, because the first person you must convince is yourself. And once your internal beliefs become stronger than your external conditions, the world will begin to mirror your mindset back to you, through opportunities, connections, and breakthroughs that once seemed impossible but now feel inevitable. If the foundation of billionaire thinking is mindset transformation, then the next pillar is building unshakable discipline, the kind that doesn't just get you out of bed early, but reshapes your entire relationship with time, commitment, and personal standards, because here's the uncomfortable truth. Billionaires don't rely on motivation, they depend on systems, routines, and habits that function with or without emotional energy. And if you're serious about leveling up your life, even from rock bottom, then you must replace wishful thinking with rigorous self-management, starting with your habits, because while most people live reactively, billionaires are masters of intentionality. They understand that success is a lagging indicator of consistent effort, and every billion-dollar empire is built on years of boring, repetitive, unglamorous work that most people would avoid, which means you need to redefine your relationship with discomfort. Start embracing the grind, the discipline of doing what needs to be done even when it's hard, boring, or inconvenient. Because while amateurs wait for inspiration, professionals build systems that generate results regardless of mood. And one of the most powerful disciplines billionaires cultivate is the ability to say no far more often than yes. They say no to distractions, gossip, reactive obligations, and low-leverage tasks that don't move the needle, and this ruthless prioritization is what allows them to preserve mental energy for high-impact decisions. So if you want to train this muscle, start auditing your day. Where are you leaking time? Who is draining your energy? What habits are reinforcing mediocrity? Because your future is being shaped by what you tolerate today. Billionaires also understand that consistency beats intensity, so rather than aiming for extreme bursts of productivity, they focus on creating routines that they can repeat for years. Morning rituals, deep work blocks, exercise, learning time, all scheduled with precision because they don't leave success up to chance. And you must do the same. Design your environment for success. Remove friction from good habits and make bad habits harder to access, because willpower is unreliable but environment is powerful. For instance, don't just plan to read more. Place your books in visible locations, set a daily reading time, and track your progress. Don't just aim to eat healthier. Prep your meals in advance, remove junk food from your home, and surround yourself with people who prioritize health. Every decision you automate frees up mental bandwidth for strategic thinking. And that's how billionaires operate. They outsource or automate the mundane so they can focus on creation, innovation, and leverage. And this brings us to another key discipline, the discipline of self-education. Billionaires are voracious learners not because they need to memorize facts, but because they're obsessed with understanding patterns, psychology, technology, and trends before others do, and they allocate time daily, even while running companies, to read, listen, reflect, and apply what they learn. Warren Buffett reads 5 to 6 hours a day, Bill Gates takes weeks to disconnect and reflect, and Naval Ravikant describes reading as the ultimate form of leverage because it allows you to access the minds of the greatest people in history for free or at low cost. So if you're broke but want to think like a billionaire, start with a daily habit of reading 20 to 30 pages of a high-quality book on wealth, psychology, business, or strategy, and take notes not just to memorize but to internalize. Because real transformation comes from integration, not information overload. Beyond learning, billionaires also train discipline in decision-making. They don't suffer from analysis paralysis or indecision, because they understand that clarity and speed beat perfection in most cases, and they build filters, mental models, and principles to make consistent choices under pressure. They ask, does this align with my long-term vision? Is this reversible? Is this a 10x opportunity or a distraction? And you can develop the same filters by writing down your own decision principles and reviewing them weekly. Next comes the discipline of emotional control. While most people let emotions hijack their day, billionaires cultivate emotional mastery, not by suppressing feelings but by understanding them, naming them, and managing their influence on behavior, especially during high-stakes moments. And they develop the ability to delay gratification, manage ego, resist panic during downturns, and maintain perspective when things go wrong. This is critical because emotional volatility destroys focus, relationships, and performance. So if you want to operate like a billionaire, start meditating, journaling, or practicing mindfulness. Even 10 minutes a day of self-observation can dramatically increase your emotional intelligence. And once you become more self-aware, you become more dangerous in a good way. Another form of billionaire discipline is in health, because your body is the vehicle through which all wealth is created, and billionaires take this seriously. They invest in trainers, chefs, biohacking, and regular health tests, but more importantly, they make energy optimization a non-negotiable priority. And while you may not have access to all that tech, you can still eat clean, move daily, sleep deeply, and cut the poisons, excessive sugar, alcohol, processed food, and screen time that ruin your mental clarity and physical stamina, because your energy is your hidden asset and most people waste it unconsciously. Billionaires guard it fiercely, and so should you. And here's another game changer. Billionaires don't react to life. They architect it, they set goals, yes, but more importantly, they build systems to ensure progress toward those goals. And the key distinction here is this: goals are outcomes. Systems are behaviors, and while the masses obsess over goals like, I want to make $1 million, billionaires ask, what systems can I build that will naturally produce wealth as a byproduct? Systems like content engines, sales funnels, investment portfolios, product pipelines, and personal routines that produce results predictably. And if you're starting small, your first system might be a 90-minute morning deep work habit, a weekly learning challenge, or a monthly savings automation. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is that you systematize your growth so it doesn't rely on willpower. And last but not least, billionaire discipline means accountability, not just public accountability, but private integrity. The ability to do what you said you'd do even when no one is watching, and this integrity compounds. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-confidence grows, your identity strengthens, and your results follow. So treat your word as sacred, set fewer goals but commit deeply to them, and track your progress ruthlessly, because measurement creates momentum and what gets measured gets improved. Start your day with intention, end your day with review, and make your habits harder to break than to keep, because that's what discipline looks like at the highest level. It's not about suffering, it's about consistency, simplicity, and clarity of purpose. And the final lesson here is this: billionaire discipline isn't rigid or joyless. It's deeply fulfilling, because when you live in alignment with your values and vision, you feel unstoppable, and when you eliminate distractions and embrace structure, you unlock creative freedom and inner peace that most people will never experience. So start today, not with a massive overhaul, but with one promise to yourself that you'll actually keep, and watch how that single act of discipline becomes the cornerstone of your future billionaire mind. Discipline is the engine that powers action, but billionaires don't stop there. They combine discipline with strategic focus, a laser-like concentration on what truly matters, and this is what separates average success from exponential wealth. The world is full of distractions posing as opportunities, and the ability to discern the vital few from the trivial many is a billionaire's superpower. While most people scatter their attention across multiple goals, projects, and ideas, billionaires identify one thing, the right thing, and then double down with extreme intensity until it produces results, because they understand the cost of distraction is far greater than most people realize. It's not just lost time, it's lost momentum, and momentum is the invisible currency of success, the compound interest of focus. And this is why billionaires constantly ask, what is the one thing that, if I get it right, makes everything else easier or unnecessary? This single question focus allows them to channel their time, energy, and capital toward high-leverage actions that produce asymmetric returns. And if you want to think like a billionaire, you must develop this same mental filtering system. Learn to ignore the noise, say no without guilt, and direct your full energy toward the few moves that create the biggest impact. Consider Jeff Bezos, who famously made 3 core decisions per day as Amazon's CEO, not hundreds, because quality decisions, not quantity, drive breakthroughs. Or Steve Jobs, who simplified Apple's entire product line to focus on a few world-class devices, and that obsessive focus turned Apple into a trillion-dollar company. In your life, this principle applies at any level. Instead of chasing 5 side hustles, build mastery in one. Instead of absorbing 10 YouTube channels, deeply study 2 books. Instead of juggling scattered habits, Anchor one discipline and build around it, because focus is a force multiplier, and the deeper your focus, the faster you build momentum. Billionaires also focus not just on what to do, but on who to become, and this shift from doing to being is crucial, because long-term success isn't just about ticking off goals. It's about aligning identity with vision, and that requires inner clarity. Who are you becoming through your habits, your choices, and your environment? What version of yourself is required to operate at billionaire levels? This identity shift is foundational. Billionaires don't act rich. They become the kind of person to whom wealth is attracted, and you do that by shedding the distractions of ego, status, and comparison, and instead rooting yourself in vision, value, and service, which leads to the next layer of billionaire focus: value over vanity. While most people chase likes, attention, and approval, billionaires obsess over value creation. How can they solve painful problems in elegant, scalable ways? How can they create delight, ease, or transformation for customers, clients, or users? Because value, not visibility, is what creates wealth. This is why billionaires think in terms of product, process, and platform. Product meaning what you offer, process meaning how you deliver it efficiently, and platform meaning how you distribute and scale it. So even if you're broke, start thinking like this. What value can I create today? What skill can I sharpen that solves a problem for others? What knowledge do I have that can be packaged, systemized, or monetized over time? This kind of thinking moves you from consumer to creator, from distraction to direction, and it builds an internal compass that helps you ignore short-term noise in pursuit of long-term leverage. And while the average person reacts to trends, billionaires set them. They observe patterns others miss, act early, and stay committed when everyone else gives up. And that's only possible through focus, deep, long-term, strategic focus, grounded in first principles and reinforced through consistent action. Another critical aspect of billionaire focus is energy management. They don't just manage time. They manage energy zones, optimizing when and how they tackle their most important work, protecting peak hours for meetings, distractions, or non-essential tasks. And you can replicate this by tracking your natural energy rhythms and scheduling your highest leverage work during peak focus blocks, while outsourcing, automating, or batching low-energy tasks during dips. Because it's not about being busy, it's about being effective, and billionaires optimize for effectiveness, not exhaustion. Equally important is their focus on relationships. Not the quantity of connections, but the quality of collaboration, mentorship, and trust, because every major leap in a billionaire's journey involved the right people at the right time, whether it was a co-founder, investor, partner, or early team member, and they're intentional about who they let into their inner circle, because they know that relationships either elevate or drain you. So surround yourself with people who challenge your thinking, who bring solutions, not excuses, who inspire action, not drama, because your focus is only as strong as the environment supporting it. Billionaires also focus obsessively on data, not just financial reports, but market feedback, behavioral signals, user metrics, and personal KPIs that help them stay grounded in reality and make data-informed decisions, and you must do the same. Track what matters, review weekly, measure progress, and eliminate what's not working, because clarity comes from tracking, and what you track improves. A billionaire's focus also extends to mental models. They simplify complexity through mental frameworks like opportunity cost, margin of safety, inversion, thinking backwards, and second-order thinking, allowing them to make faster, better decisions under uncertainty. So if you want to think like a billionaire, start learning these models, applying them, and reflecting on how they shape your outcomes, because better thinking leads to better results, and focus sharpens your thinking. One final but overlooked focus point of billionaires is legacy. They think beyond money, beyond themselves, beyond the current decade, asking, what am I building that will outlive me? What impact will I leave behind? And this long-term lens helps them make wiser choices today, because when you operate from a legacy mindset, you rise above short-term temptations, petty distractions, and fleeting noise, and you begin living with intention, building with purpose, and showing up as your most powerful self. So in summary, billionaire focus is not rigid, it's powerful, flexible, evolving, but always intentional. It's the discipline of choosing what matters and letting go of what doesn't. It's about energy, identity, value, people, and legacy, all aligned toward a vision so compelling that distractions lose their power, and your path becomes clear. Not easy, but clear. After mastering discipline and sharpening your focus, the next essential step to thinking like a billionaire, even when you're broke, is understanding and applying the principle of leverage, which is the force multiplier of all effort and the secret behind every massive fortune. Because billionaires don't build empires by working harder, they build them by working smarter, by finding ways to exert minimal input for maximum output, and this mental model of leverage transforms everything from how they structure businesses to how they use their time, network, capital, and creativity. At its core, leverage means using tools, systems, people, or platforms to achieve results that would be impossible through individual effort alone. And while the average person trades time for money, billionaires use leverage to create time freedom and wealth multiplication simultaneously. So the question becomes, how do you build leverage from scratch? It begins with the mindset shift from labor to scale, from linear thinking to exponential vision, where you stop asking, how can I do more? And start asking, how can this operate without me? How can I reach 1,000 people instead of one? How can I build something once that pays me forever? And that shift alone rewires your entire approach to value creation. There are 4 main types of leverage billionaires use: labor leverage, people; capital leverage, money; code leverage, software/technology; and content leverage, media/brand. And even if you don't have access to capital or employees yet, you can start immediately using the last 2, code and content, which are digital and permissionless, meaning you don't need anyone's approval to start a YouTube channel, write a blog, build an app, or create an ebook. These are scalable assets that work while you sleep, and the earlier you begin building them, the faster you break free from the limitations of time for money thinking. Take Naval Ravikant's advice. You will get rich by giving society what it wants at scale and doing it with leverage, and that means you need to identify what scalable value you can create, whether it's teaching something, building a tool, curating information, entertaining, solving problems, or connecting people in ways that compound. And you do this by leaning into your strengths, your interests, your skills, and then packaging them into forms that scale through the internet. Blogs, courses, SaaS, podcasts, communities, newsletters, or niche platforms. The magic of content leverage, for example, is that one YouTube video can generate leads for years, one viral tweet can attract investors, one article can be read by millions, all without needing to physically be anywhere or repeat the work. And this is how modern billionaires like Mr. Beast, Alex Hormozi, or Cody Sanchez have built empires using digital leverage alone, starting with nothing but a phone, internet, and consistency. The second layer of leverage is software or code, building tools or platforms that solve real problems automatically or semi-automatically, whether it's a productivity app, a marketplace, or even a simple website that connects supply and demand. And while not everyone is a coder, you don't need to be. You can learn no-code tools like Webflow, Notion, Zapier, or AI automation platforms to start creating systems that run without you. And once you think in systems instead of tasks, everything changes. You stop asking, what should I do today? And start asking, what machine can I build today that eliminates or automates this task forever? And this brings us to the most classic form of leverage. People. Labor leverage means hiring, delegating, or partnering with others who specialize in areas you don't, and billionaires excel at assembling world-class teams, not because they want to manage people, but because they want to scale their impact, and they know that greatness is a team sport, so start small. Hire freelancers, use virtual assistants, collaborate with others who bring different strengths, and build toward a structure where you become the designer of systems, not the executor of every detail. Equally important is capital leverage, using money to make more money through investments, advertising, acquisitions, or asset allocation. And even if you're broke today, you must learn to think like an investor, not a consumer, which means viewing every dollar not as spending power, but as seed capital, a soldier you deploy to multiply itself. So start by investing in tools that save you time, in education that sharpens your skills, and eventually in assets that produce cash flow. Stocks, real estate, businesses, royalties, intellectual property, etc. Billionaires don't hoard cash. They allocate it strategically, and they view liquidity as optionality. The ability to seize an opportunity when it arises, and they understand that money is energy. It flows to those who manage it wisely and flows away from those who disrespect it through waste, fear, or ignorance. But perhaps the most underestimated form of leverage is network leverage, who you know, how you connect, and the value you provide within your circles, because every breakthrough, funding, deals, partnerships, flows through people, and the better you get at building trust, offering value first, and being visible in the right ecosystems, the more leverage you'll gain through reputation, referrals, and reach. Billionaires don't just network. They strategically position themselves in ecosystems of opportunity. They connect dots others don't, and they use relationships as bridges to scale faster. So invest in your social capital by contributing value, showing up consistently, asking great questions, being authentic, and following up intentionally. And the final layer of leverage is your brand, because in today's world, your name can become leverage. The more trust, clarity, and results associated with you, the easier it becomes to attract deals, talent, and attention at scale, and your brand is built through your ideas, your actions, your consistency, and your ability to communicate who you help and how you help them. So, stop hiding, start publishing, start solving problems out loud, and let the market respond, because every piece of leverage begins with visibility and value, and the earlier you embrace this, the faster you rise. In conclusion, the billionaire mind isn't about working 100 hours a week. It's about finding what you can build, automate, or multiply once and benefit from forever, and it starts by asking better questions. What assets am I building? What systems am I creating? What can I produce once that pays me forever? Who can help me accelerate this? And how can I serve 1,000 people instead of one? Now that you've grasped the foundational types of leverage, content, code, capital, people, and brand, it's time to delve deeper into how billionaires use strategic leverage layering to exponentially multiply their impact, scale businesses, and escape the limitations of ordinary thinking, because leverage is not something you use once. It's something you compound, stack, and masterfully orchestrate to work in harmony, and the truly elite understand how to combine forms of leverage in innovative ways to build indestructible systems. For instance, think about how a billionaire entrepreneur might launch a product. They use content, media/marketing to drive attention, code, technology/infrastructure to deliver efficiently, capital to amplify reach through advertising or partnerships, people to execute operations, and brand to establish long-term trust. Every layer works together to create momentum that snowballs over time, and this coordinated synergy is what separates high-level builders from those stuck grinding one input at a time. So if you're starting from zero, the first mindset shift is to stop thinking in isolation. Don't just create content, build a content system that attracts, nurtures, and converts. Don't just build a product, pair it with a funnel, a lead magnet, an email sequence, a feedback loop, and don't just work hard, work architecturally by asking, how can this scale, systematize, or stack with something else I'm already doing? Because billionaires are architects of leverage ecosystems, and every action they take today lays bricks for future freedom. This begins with understanding how to turn one asset into many outcomes. A single podcast episode, for example, can become YouTube clips, short-form reels, blog posts, tweets, quotes, newsletter topics, and more, each repurposed and redistributed across platforms, working 24/7 to build brand and generate value while the creator sleeps. And this is not just theory, it's how creators like Gary V. or Hormozi built personal empires. The same principle applies to digital products. Once you write an ebook or design a course, you can sell it infinite times without recreating it, And this one-to-many power of digital leverage is why billionaires relentlessly shift toward ownership over consumption. Because when you own systems, tools, platforms, and IP, you control scale, and control is the gateway to freedom. Now let's talk about time leverage, one of the most subtle yet powerful. Billionaire tools. They don't just use their own time wisely, they multiply it by making better decisions up front so they don't have to revisit problems twice, and they treat time as capital, something to be invested into scalable assets, not just tasks, which means saying no to nearly everything that isn't aligned with long-term growth, and yes, only to the few things that can compound. Imagine having 5 hours a week to work on your dream. If you spend those hours learning skills, creating systems, launching tiny experiments, and documenting your journey, over a year you've built a body of leveraged work that others haven't even started, and even more powerful, you've built confidence, data, and directional clarity. This is also why billionaires are obsessed with decision leverage. They use frameworks to make better choices faster, understanding that great decisions are worth millions and poor decisions cost years. So they reduce decision fatigue by creating default rules. If this doesn't align with our core mission, we say no, or we only invest in X category with Y metrics. And you can apply this right now by creating filters for your life, who you work with, what projects you say yes to, what habits you protect, what ideas you pursue. Because the more you automate good decisions, the more space you create for creative thinking and deep work. And here's a billionaire secret. They aren't attached to being the smartest person in the room. They leverage smarter people, hire elite thinkers, or collaborate with high-performing teams, because ego kills scale and humility invites leverage. So instead of asking, how can I do this? Start asking, who already knows how to do this, and how can I incentivize them to help me? This question alone will change your trajectory, because it pulls you out of the trap of self-reliance and into the world of collaborative leverage, where each person brings their edge to the table and multiplies the value of the group. This applies to mentors as well. Billionaires leverage other people's experience, learning from the mistakes, frameworks, and insights of those who've already built what they want to build. And you can do the same by reading founder memoirs, studying deal breakdowns, listening to interviews, and reaching out to mentors who resonate with your vision. Leverage is not always about tools, it's about information, people, and access. And speaking of access, one of the most overlooked forms of billionaire leverage is distribution leverage, owning the means by which their value reaches the world. Whether it's a YouTube channel, an email list, a massive customer base, or a loyal community, billionaires build or acquire distribution channels because they know attention is the new oil, and whoever controls the flow of attention controls the economy of the future. Even without capital, you can start building your distribution engine by consistently publishing helpful, valuable content that positions you as an authority, because over time, your audience becomes your biggest asset. It's what you bring to every partnership, launch, or venture. And once you have distribution, you can plug any idea into it and generate leverage on demand. Now let's take this further. Billionaires also understand timing as leverage. They don't just build great products, they launch at the right moment, ride macro trends, and position themselves at the forefront of emerging shifts. Whether it's AI, energy, blockchain, or content creation, they place themselves where momentum is building and create value in advance of mass adoption. And you must begin training your mind to spot these waves, read trend reports, follow macro thinkers, join conversations early, and develop the ability to act when others hesitate, because timing alone can create exponential leverage if you're early, prepared, and positioned. And finally, the most powerful leverage of all is belief leverage, the ability to act on a vision so compelling that it attracts capital, people, and energy before the result even exists. Every massive company began as an idea that someone believed in so deeply, they could convince others to see it too. And this internal conviction is a magnet for resources, because confidence backed by clarity inspires action in others. So the takeaway is this: start seeing your life as a leverage engine. Every system you build, every habit you enforce, every connection you nurture, every piece of content you create, every skill you refine, and every decision you make is either creating leverage or destroying it. And the billionaire's advantage isn't just in money. It's in their obsessive commitment to multiplying every action through intentional structure, emotional control, and bold, long-term execution. So ask yourself, what can I create today that works for me tomorrow? What can I automate that frees up my mind? What relationship can I deepen that opens doors? What platform can I grow that prints opportunity? And when your days become focused on leverage instead of labor, you'll look up one day and realize you're no longer playing the same game as everyone else. You've moved from effort to impact, from hustle to harmony, from broke to builder, and from ambition to actualization. At this point in your transformation, having fortified your mindset with discipline, sharpened your focus, and equipped yourself with the art of leverage, you're ready to unlock one of the most elusive but vital billionaire traits. Visionary thinking, the ability to see beyond the immediate, the ordinary, and the obvious, and to create mental blueprints of future realities that others can't yet imagine. Billionaire thinkers are visionaries not by accident, but by conscious mental design. They've trained themselves to escape the gravitational pull of the present and to forecast, architect, and manifest what does not yet exist. And this is what makes them creators of industries, not just consumers of trends. Visionary thinking starts with clarity of purpose, a guiding mission that becomes the North Star of all action, and without this clarity, most people drift. They chase opportunities instead of creating them, they react instead of initiating, and they compromise instead of committing. But billionaires are crystal clear on their why, and it informs everything. How they use their time, who they hire, what they build, and what they're willing to suffer for. Jeff Bezos envisioned the everything store long before e-commerce was common. Elon Musk imagined colonizing Mars while most were optimizing car design. And Oprah built a media empire around a deeper vision of empowering others. These were not just lofty ideas, they were commitments fueled by clarity, and that clarity attracted people, resources, and belief. So how do you develop visionary clarity? It starts by zooming out. Look beyond your current limitations, income, followers, failures, and even current identity, and ask, if nothing stood in my way, what would I create? What does the highest version of my life look like? Who do I want to become, and what legacy do I want to leave? Visionary thinking begins where excuses end, and it thrives in imagination fed by intentional thought, not passive daydreaming. Spend time visualizing your future not as fantasy but as strategy. See the systems, feel the energy, identify the players, map the steps, and let your subconscious begin aligning with that vision. Because what you visualize consistently, you eventually move toward, and billionaires know this. They practice. Mental rehearsal, not just goal setting. They feel their vision until it becomes familiar, and this primes their behavior to act in accordance with their imagined future. Now, while many people associate visionary thinking with big dreams, the truth is billionaires also practice precision vision. They break massive dreams into micro-targets and reverse engineer them with ruthless specificity. If the goal is to build a billion-dollar company, they ask, what does the company need to look like at $100 million? What team, what product, what systems must exist? What metrics must we hit this quarter to be on track? And you must do the same. Don't just say, I want to be wealthy. Map out what your first $10,000 month looks like, then $100,000 year, then $1 million decade. Break the vision into dominoes and then knock them down strategically, because visionary thinking without execution is delusion, but when combined with action, it becomes unstoppable. Next, understand that billionaires also see the world differently. They're pattern seekers, trend readers, and anomaly hunters, constantly asking, what's broken that shouldn't be? What's inefficient? What's outdated? What's missing? They view the world as a sandbox of problems waiting for elegant, scalable solutions, and they train their perception to notice what others overlook. Emerging markets, consumer pain points, cultural shifts, technology enablers. So you must begin observing your environment through the lens of opportunity. Look at your frustrations as signals, your curiosities as clues, your unique life experiences as assets, and then ask, what value can I extract, build, or deliver here that others have missed? Because your next big idea will likely come not from genius but from attentiveness. Also, visionary thinkers embrace calculated risk. They're not reckless, but they are courageous, willing to act when the data is incomplete but the upside is asymmetric, and they understand that every vision requires risk. The risk of judgment, the risk of failure, the risk of starting from scratch. But they accept that because they know staying small is the bigger risk, and that regret is more expensive than any failed venture. This mindset is crucial if you're broke, because when you have nothing to lose, you actually have maximum upside potential. And billionaires don't see risk as a threat, they see it as leverage because every risky move made them more skilled, more visible, and more respected. And let's not forget, visionaries are communicators. They don't just see the future, they enroll others into it with conviction, language, and emotional clarity. From Steve Jobs' product launches to Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream speech to Elon Musk's investor pitches, every great visionary builds momentum by sharing their vision with energy, and you must practice this too. Even if you're not public yet, get comfortable talking about your goals out loud, sharing your ideas, writing about your mission, crafting your narrative, because your ability to express your vision determines how fast you attract partners, customers, believers, and allies. A big vision communicated well becomes a magnet for leverage. Now let's address a silent enemy of visionary thinking: pragmatic pessimism, the internal voice that says, be realistic, don't aim too high, play it safe. And while realism has its place in execution, it's a vision killer in the ideation stage. Billionaires don't limit the dream. They limit the distractions, the noise, the mediocrity, but never the dream. So give yourself full permission to imagine wildly, boldly, and without apology, because everything we now call normal, smartphones, flight, electric cars, AI assistants, began as the vision of someone unwilling to let doubt dictate their destiny. And finally, visionary thinking requires resilience, because no bold vision is ever achieved without ridicule, resistance, or failure, and billionaires embrace that. They expect the struggle, and they keep moving, iterating, refining, and believing even when the world doesn't yet see what they see, and that's what makes them visionary leaders. They hold the light long enough for others to see it too. So whether you're broke, unknown, doubted, or underestimated, your vision still matters. It's the seed of your power, the blueprint of your future, and the most valuable thing you own, because vision creates direction, direction shapes behavior, behavior creates results, and results change your life. Start with the dream, speak it, map it, and move toward it with unshakable faith and relentless execution. Because thinking like a billionaire means seeing far beyond where you stand and acting boldly anyway. Visionary thinking doesn't end with big ideas. It evolves into visionary execution, where dreams are broken into action plans, strategies, and momentum-generating habits. Because billionaires are not just visionaries in theory, they are executors in practice, and their brilliance lies in their ability to bridge the gap between what could be and what is through systems, structure, and relentless movement. This ability to execute visionary ideas at scale is what turns startups into empires and ideas into legacies. And if you want to think like a billionaire, you must learn how to live in the future while acting in the now, managing two parallel realities, what is and what will be, and aligning your daily behavior to build the bridge between them. Execution begins with clarity of priorities, because the difference between a visionary and a dreamer is focus, and billionaires are masters of narrowing their energy to what truly matters. They ask, what 3 dominoes must fall this year to make the rest irrelevant? Then they reverse engineer the quarter, the month, the week, the day, and finally the hour, turning the distant dream into a disciplined process. And this kind of cascading clarity is what allows them to operate with insane speed and precision while others get stuck in busyness. So if you're starting from zero, stop trying to do everything. Instead, identify your one thing that moves your vision forward, and make that your daily non-negotiable, because billionaires don't fill their day with random effort. They build systems that produce consistent results, and systems are the scaffolding of visionary execution. Now here's the truth. Systems are boring, and that's exactly why most people avoid them, but billionaires embrace the boredom of greatness, knowing that world-class outcomes are the result of repeatable, often unsexy processes, not chaotic bursts of inspiration. From Bezos's customer obsession flywheel to Ray Dalio's principles-based culture to Elon's iterative product feedback loops, systems are at the core of their ability to scale and execute repeatedly at a high level. So if you want to become a visionary executor, start documenting your processes, refining your routines, and optimizing for consistency over complexity. Because once your actions become habitual, your results become inevitable. Execution also requires speed, but not reckless speed, calculated urgency that compresses timelines and accelerates feedback. And billionaires move quickly because they understand that velocity matters. The faster you move, the faster you learn, the faster you adapt, and the faster you compound. And they don't obsess over perfect launches. They release MVPs, collect data, and iterate fast because perfection is the enemy of momentum. So stop waiting for things to be perfect before you act. Launch messy, learn rapidly, adapt intelligently, and move forward boldly because while others are perfecting, you'll already be progressing, and that's the billionaire edge. Now let's talk about decision-making, another core element of execution, and billionaires are relentless decision-makers. They use frameworks like inversion, first principles thinking, and expected value to simplify complex decisions, and they move quickly because indecision is expensive and clarity often comes from action, not overthinking. So build your own decision framework. Define your values, your success criteria, your risk tolerance, and your non-negotiables, and use them to eliminate options that waste energy. Remember, billionaires don't waste time debating things that don't matter. They decide once and move on, and this decisiveness creates momentum that compounds. Next, understand that visionary execution requires team building, because no great vision is executed alone, and billionaires are obsessed with surrounding themselves with exceptional people who elevate the mission, challenge their thinking, and own their lanes. They hire slowly, fire quickly, and prioritize cultural alignment as much as competence, because one misaligned hire can stall momentum, while one aligned partner can accelerate your dream exponentially, and you don't need a massive team to start. Just one or two people who believe in the vision and are willing to build with you. So think like a recruiter, sell your dream with clarity, attract mission-aligned talent, and delegate with trust, because the faster you empower others, the faster you scale. And while teams are crucial, so is self-leadership, the discipline of holding yourself accountable to high standards even when no one is watching, and billionaires are deeply self-governed. They don't wait for motivation. They engineer environments that support execution, whether that's working in deep focus blocks, setting consequence-based commitments, or designing morning routines that prime their mind and body for performance. So if you're broke but serious, start with your habits. Wake up with purpose. Eliminate distractions, structure your day, track your progress, and treat every hour like an investment, because your time is more valuable than your money. It's the currency of your future. Now another tool of visionary execution is measurement, because what gets measured gets improved, and billionaires are obsessed with KPIs, dashboards, and feedback loops that tell them what's working and what isn't, and you must apply this too. Track your progress weekly, analyze your wins and bottlenecks, and use data to guide decisions rather than emotion, because without measurement, momentum dies in ambiguity. And here's something most people ignore. Execution is emotional, and billionaires train their emotional resilience just as much as their cognitive skills. They expect setbacks, manage stress, stay calm under pressure, and use adversity as fuel, not friction, and this emotional maturity is what allows them to keep executing when others freeze, doubt, or quit. So if you want to operate like them, build your emotional toolkit. Journal when you're overwhelmed, meditate to stay centered, reflect often, and surround yourself with grounded thinkers who hold you to your highest self. Now let's talk about resourcefulness. Because when you're broke, you can't rely on capital, but you can rely on creativity, courage, and grit, and billionaire executors don't see constraints as barriers. They see them as invitations to innovate, and they ask, if I had no money, how would I solve this? If I couldn't use traditional methods, what would I do instead? This constraint-based thinking sparks innovation, and often, the best ideas emerge from the tightest conditions. So stop waiting for perfect resources. Start with what you have, and use your ingenuity as your leverage. And finally, visionary execution is about alignment. Aligning your daily actions with your deepest purpose, your short-term goals with your long-term vision, your internal state with your external output. And when everything aligns, execution becomes natural, momentum becomes unstoppable, and your vision becomes reality. Not through luck or magic, but through deliberate, disciplined, and inspired action taken over time. Because in the end, the people who win are not the ones with the best ideas, but the ones who execute relentlessly, adapt intelligently, and build consistently. Those who refuse to let fear, fatigue, or failure disrupt their mission. So if you're ready to rise from broke to builder, dreamer to doer, then let your vision not just live in your mind, put it in your calendar, your habits, your systems, your team, and your decisions, and show the world what it looks like when purpose meets power and vision meets action. The next evolution in thinking like a billionaire is mastering the psychology of money. Not just how to make it, but how to understand its energy, behavior, and influence over your choices, emotions, and identity. Because while most people view money as a goal, billionaires see it as a tool, a game, and more importantly, a mirror that reflects their mindset. And if you're broke, this shift is critical. Not because you need to obsess over money, but because you must learn to relate to it differently if you ever want to attract, keep, and grow it. The truth is, money is never just about numbers. It's about emotions. Fear, shame, power, desire, security, and worthiness. And most people's financial struggles stem from unexamined beliefs formed in childhood, culture, or trauma. Like money is evil, rich people are selfish, I'm not good with money, or I don't deserve wealth. And these hidden scripts run silently in the background, sabotaging progress no matter how hard you hustle. So to think like a billionaire, you must start by rewriting your money story, bringing those beliefs to the surface, questioning them, and replacing them with empowering narratives like, money amplifies my impact. I am responsible for building financial abundance. And wealth is a skill I can learn and master. Billionaires are acutely aware of the subconscious programming that drives their financial behavior, and they work on it constantly. Through journaling, reflection, coaching, even therapy. Not because they worship money, but because they understand that wealth flows to those who are internally aligned with receiving and managing it. And beyond belief systems, billionaires treat money like a resource to be allocated, not a trophy to be displayed. Every dollar is assigned a job, a direction, a purpose, and they make financial decisions based on long-term utility, not short-term emotion, asking questions like, will this generate return? Will this protect my downside? Will this buy time, freedom, or leverage? And this is where the average person loses by chasing status symbols, lifestyle upgrades, and emotional spending, instead of treating money as a value-accelerating asset that works best when it's moving intentionally. So the first billionaire habit you must adopt is financial awareness. Track your income, expenses, habits, and patterns without judgment, because awareness creates control, and control creates freedom. When you understand where every dollar goes, you begin reclaiming your financial power, and you shift from reactive to proactive living. Next, learn to embrace delayed gratification, one of the deepest money principles embedded in billionaire thinking, because they know that wealth isn't built by having more income, but by making better choices with that income. Investing instead of consuming, building instead of flexing, learning instead of escaping, and that ability to wait, to be patient, to let compound interest do its silent work over time is a superpower you must develop. Warren Buffett didn't become a billionaire in his 30s. He became a billionaire through discipline, patience, and compounding over decades, and you can start this today by investing small amounts regularly, building skills patiently, and avoiding the trap of wanting fast success. Now let's talk about risk, because billionaires don't avoid it, they understand it, manage it, and use it strategically, seeing every dollar spent or invested through the lens of risk versus reward, and this means being willing to lose small amounts in order to learn, grow, and gain leverage, but also knowing when to protect capital, build buffers, and avoid emotional decisions. If you're broke, your first investment should be in yourself, your skills, your habits, your tools, because no market crash can take that away from you, and the return on personal growth is infinite. The next step is to build the habit of ownership. Billionaires don't just earn money, they own things that generate money, like equity in businesses, stocks, real estate, or intellectual property, and this is the big shift. From working for money to building machines that work for you. And even if you don't have much, start thinking like an owner. What digital assets can I create? What business can I start lean? What ideas can I monetize? What audience can I build? Ownership begins with mindset, not capital, and billionaires train themselves to spot undervalued assets that can become wealth engines over time. Also, billionaires think in time horizons that most people can't comprehend. They aren't just planning for the next month or year, but for decades, and they know that long-term thinking is one of the rarest and most profitable skills on the planet. So while most people ask, "What will this get me now?" billionaires ask, "What will this unlock in 10 years if I stay consistent?" And this is how they avoid short-term traps, hold through downturns, and make decisions that compound instead of collapse. The longer your time horizon, the better your decisions become, because you start valuing sustainability, peace, and purpose over hype, status, or speed. And now let's touch on generosity, an often overlooked part of the billionaire money mindset, because the wealthiest people often give the most, not out of guilt or PR, but because they understand the energetic law of circulation. Money flows to those who allow it to move through them in service of others. Generosity doesn't mean reckless giving. It means intentional contribution, using your resources to uplift others, fund missions, support causes, and unlock potential in people and communities. And this habit of giving builds not just external goodwill, but internal expansion. It breaks scarcity, reinforces abundance, and aligns your financial behavior with higher values. When you give freely and wisely, you feel more wealthy, and that psychological state magnetizes more wealth toward you. Now let's explore the emotional neutrality billionaires cultivate toward money. They are not ruled by greed or fear, but guided by logic and values, which means when they lose money, they learn, and when they gain money, they stay grounded. They don't panic. In recessions or over-celebrate booms, they zoom out, stick to principles, and trust their systems. And this is where emotional intelligence meets financial literacy. To replicate this, build emotional habits around money. Pause before big decisions. Analyze your financial behavior triggers like stress or boredom. And create rituals that anchor you in calm clarity, like weekly reviews, journaling, or decision checklists. Now lastly, let's talk about financial imagination. Billionaires expand. They're thinking by imagining new business models, revenue streams, partnerships, and monetization paths that others miss. And they constantly ask, "What's next? What's possible? What haven't I seen yet?" They don't just optimize what exists, they invent value. And you can start doing this by exploring new markets, testing new ideas, studying other industries, and looking at problems through the lens of curiosity rather than limitation. In conclusion, the psychology of money is not about hoarding cash or chasing luxury. It's about developing a wise, creative, empowered, and intentional relationship with wealth that allows you to use money as a force for freedom, impact, and expression. Think like a billionaire by mastering your beliefs, understanding your habits, playing the long game, embracing ownership, giving with purpose, and moving through money decisions with clarity instead of chaos. Because when your mind becomes a wealthy place, your life follows in time. Now that you've understood how billionaires think about money at a psychological and strategic level, it's time to shift our attention toward another critical piece of the wealth-building puzzle. Financial systems and automation, because billionaires don't just make money. They engineer ecosystems where money is captured, optimized, grown, protected, and reinvested with surgical precision. And this is one of the biggest differences between someone who earns a lot and someone who stays wealthy. For life, the average person focuses only on income, while the billionaire focuses on structure, and that structure is built through layers of intentional financial behavior: budgeting, asset allocation, tax strategy, passive income streams, and reinvestment loops that turn active income into scalable wealth over time. Let's begin with the core principle. Billionaires treat money like a business, not a mood. They don't rely on memory, willpower, or emotion to manage wealth. They use systems, and these systems create clarity, consistency, and control, which allows them to make better decisions faster and with less stress. So if you're broke right now, your first move isn't to chase more money. It's to organize the money you already have, no matter how little, because financial chaos is a mindset and a habit that compounds into stress, debt, and stagnation, while financial clarity, even at small levels, builds confidence, momentum, and discipline. Start by creating what I call the Billionaire Budget Framework, which isn't about cutting coffee or living like a monk. It's about knowing where your money is going, assigning it roles, and making sure it aligns with your goals. Every dollar you touch should be categorized into 4 buckets: living, building, growing, and giving. The living bucket covers essential needs, housing, food, transport, health, etc. The building bucket is for skills, tools, and business investments. The growing bucket goes into assets that multiply over time: stocks, ETFs, real estate, or digital income generators. And the giving bucket is for contribution, because generosity fuels abundance, and when you automate this system, even with 5% or 10% at first, you start behaving like a high-level wealth manager, not a passive spender. The next layer is automation, because billionaires know the biggest wealth leaks come from inconsistency, forgetfulness, and emotion-based spending, so they automate everything they can: bill payments, savings transfers, investment contributions, even charitable giving, because automation removes willpower from the equation and makes smart decisions happen by default, not desire. And this isn't limited to people with 6 figures in the bank. You can start automating small amounts today. Set up an automatic transfer to your savings every payday, schedule a micro-investment into index funds each month, use budgeting apps like Inab or Monarch to track your flow, and treat automation like a robot army working in the background while you build your dream. And beyond automation, billionaires set rules for money. Guardrails that protect them from reckless decisions or emotional reactions, like never spend more than 30% of unexpected income, or always wait 24 hours before buying anything over $500, or reinvest 70% of all business profit. And you can create your own rules too, based on your values and vision, because rules create boundaries, and boundaries protect your goals. Now let's talk about asset stacking, the art of converting earned income into scalable cash flow, because billionaires don't just save money, they deploy it strategically into things that grow passively. Real estate rentals, dividend-paying stocks, online courses, royalties, peer-to-peer lending, digital assets, or ownership in other businesses. And you can do the same even if you start small: invest in fractional shares, buy cash-flowing domains, rent out a digital product, or co-invest in a deal with others. And the goal is to slowly shift from active income, time equals money, to leveraged income, assets equals money. This is how financial freedom is truly built, not by working harder forever, but by compounding returns through intentional allocation. Now let's touch on one of the most underrated billionaire habits: tax strategy, because taxes are the largest expense most people will pay in their lifetime, yet the least studied, and billionaires build entire wealth empires by understanding tax codes, using legal entities, leveraging deductions, and protecting gains with precision. If you're serious about wealth, start learning about how your income is taxed, what deductions you can legally use, and how to structure your side hustle, business, or freelance work under a registered entity like an LLC, not for evasion but for efficiency, because the system rewards those who learn it, not those who ignore it. And along with taxes, billionaires obsess over risk protection, insurance, legal structure, emergency funds, and diversification strategies that protect them from market crashes, lawsuits, theft, or life surprises. And this mindset is something you must adopt early. Get basic insurance in place, keep at least 3 months of expenses liquid, never put all your money into one thing, and protect your time as fiercely as your capital, because defense is as important as offense in the game of money. Now let's talk about financial rituals, weekly habits that billionaires use to stay aligned with their goals, such as money reviews, net worth tracking, deal analysis, or planning upcoming investments. And you can do this too with a simple Sunday ritual. Sit down, check your income and expenses, review your goals, look at your savings rate, analyze where you wasted money, and make one decision to improve for next week. These rituals build awareness, and awareness drives discipline. And lastly, let's explore financial flywheels, the ultimate goal of billionaire systems, where money coming in automatically feeds growth systems which generate more cash flow, which fuels more investment, which drives more income, and so on in an infinite loop. For example, imagine this: your side hustle earns $1,000 per month, $700 is reinvested into ads or freelancer. That increases revenue to $1,500. Now you invest $500 into index funds. They compound over time while the business keeps scaling. Then you turn your content into a course that sells passively. You use profits to buy a cash-flowing website. Repeat. And this is how billionaires think. Not in linear income, but in feedback loops that compound both money and time over the years until wealth becomes inevitable. And even if you start with $50 per month, It's the thinking that matters, the commitment to systematize, to automate, to optimize, and to elevate your financial life from chaos to clarity, from reaction to mastery, and from hustle to sovereignty. So don't wait until you're rich to behave like the wealthy. Think, act, and build systems today that your future self will thank you for, because thinking like a billionaire is about treating money like a tool for freedom, not a symbol of worth, and mastering its flow is not just strategy, it's self-respect in action. Reaching the final chapter of this transformation isn't just a symbolic milestone. It's a call to action, a declaration that the knowledge you've gathered now demands embodiment, because billionaires don't stop at understanding concepts. They live them with relentless conviction, and this final piece of the puzzle is about integrating everything: mindset, habits, systems, wealth psychology, and visionary thinking into a sustainable, unshakable identity that can thrive in chaos, expand in adversity, and lead in uncertainty. You see, the most powerful thing about thinking like a billionaire isn't the money, the luxury, or the deals. It's the freedom to live on your own terms, the confidence to shape your environment rather than be shaped by it, and the clarity to move through the world with purpose, impact, and legacy in mind. And this chapter will pull all the scattered wires of your development into one integrated power source: billionaire consciousness, a way of being that transcends mere ambition and becomes your operating system. It starts with radical self-responsibility, the idea that nothing external, no economy, no algorithm, no employer, no background, has more power over your outcomes than the decisions you make daily, and billionaires are obsessed with owning their outcomes, good or bad, because blame is a leash and responsibility is liberation. So take inventory. Where are you outsourcing your power? Is it in your past, your upbringing, your lack of resources, your fears? Reclaim it all, because when you take full responsibility, you gain full control, and that's the first gate into billionaire consciousness. Next, internalize the truth that your identity is your ceiling. Not your skills, not your network, not your education, but who you believe yourself to be. And billionaires think of themselves not as hustlers, employees, or even entrepreneurs, but as creators, architects, and leaders who shape systems, shift markets, and challenge norms. And this isn't arrogance. It's intentional identity design. So ask yourself, who am I becoming? What traits, standards, and beliefs define the billionaire version of me? And then act accordingly, not someday but now. If the billionaire you wakes up early, eats clean, studies markets, protects time, builds teams, thinks long-term, takes risks, and moves with clarity, then every small act that aligns with that identity becomes a vote for that future, and over time, identity shifts from intention to embodiment. And with identity comes vision-driven behavior, where your actions are pulled by a compelling future instead of pushed by present pain. Because average people act out of avoidance, of debt, of discomfort, of fear, while billionaire thinkers act out of vision, of freedom, of mastery, of legacy, of contribution. And that vision becomes so emotionally magnetic that it rewires discipline into desire, sacrifice into joy, and delay into strategy. Your life becomes a game of alignment. Is this choice helping me build the future or escape the present? And that one question can filter your decisions, habits, and focus faster than any productivity hack. Now let's talk about emotional mastery, because the biggest battle in wealth isn't external, it's inner. Fear of failure, imposter syndrome, anxiety, procrastination, shame, burnout, doubt, and identity friction, and billionaires don't conquer these emotions once. They build mental frameworks to navigate them constantly, treating emotions like data rather than dictators. Fear becomes a signal for growth, doubt becomes a prompt for research, and failure becomes feedback, not finality. You must train yourself to feel fully but act wisely, to hold emotional turbulence without drowning in it. And this comes from practices like meditation, journaling, feedback loops, and intentional solitude. When your inner world is ordered, no chaos outside can break you. And this inner congruence is the secret resilience weapon of every billionaire you admire. Now let's weave in leadership, because you don't rise to the top alone. Billionaires become magnets for talent, trust, and collaboration because They develop the ability to communicate vision, inspire action, make hard decisions, and hold standards others won't, and leadership doesn't begin when you have a team. It begins when you take ownership of yourself, your time, your values, your mission, and your message. It means asking better questions, listening more than speaking, creating more than consuming, and modeling the behaviors you expect from others. And when you do lead others, whether it's one assistant, 10 followers, or 1,000 clients, you lead with clarity, compassion, and consequence, knowing that people rise to the level of leadership you demonstrate, not demand. And at the core of leadership is value creation, the ultimate game of billionaires, because wealth follows value, and the most consistent way to earn, scale, and sustain income is by solving problems that matter to others, at scale, and with excellence. So begin obsessing over this. Who am I serving? What do they deeply need? How can I solve that 10x better, faster, or cheaper than anyone else? Because once you understand value, money becomes inevitable. Whether you build products, content, teams, brands, or code, value is the gravitational center of your empire. Now let's break into environment design, because billionaires curate everything. The people they talk to, the information they consume, the energy they tolerate, and the spaces they work in, because they understand that behavior is not just a function of willpower, it's a reflection of environment. So your job is to architect your environment to pull you towards success. Unfollow noise, block distractions, audit relationships, optimize your workspace, schedule focus blocks, and surround yourself with people who stretch, not shrink, your identity. When your environment supports your vision, your growth accelerates without constant self-discipline. And here's where we enter legacy thinking, the crown jewel of billionaire consciousness, because the most evolved billionaires don't just build for income, they build for impact, asking, what will outlive me? What will my name represent? How will others benefit from my work long after I'm gone? And when you think in decades, your priorities shift from vanity to value, from speed to substance, from flash to foundation, and your work becomes a vehicle for generational empowerment, not just personal gain. Even if you're broke today, begin with legacy in mind. Document your journey, build intellectual assets, mentor others, write boldly, create structures that last, and make decisions not just for profit but for purpose, because impact expands wealth in ways money alone never can. And, finally, the ultimate integration of billionaire thinking is sustainability. The idea that greatness isn't built in spurts, but in seasons, cycles, and systems, and the most successful people you admire didn't burn out. They built infrastructure for longevity. Energy rituals, recovery systems, seasons of sprinting and stillness, boundaries that protect focus, and self-awareness that adjusts strategies with time. If you want to sustain your rise, make space for reflection, renewal, relationships, and realignment, because success that destroys your health, peace, or soul isn't success. It's ego in disguise. And when all of this comes together, identity, vision, value, systems, relationships, health, impact, you don't just think like a billionaire, you live like one, not because of the money in your account, but because of the power in your decisions, the purpose in your work, the peace in your mind, and the freedom in your future. And that is the real destination, to become the type of person who creates wealth from within, who expands possibility for others, and who walks through life not chasing validation but building a legacy of excellence, contribution, and unstoppable growth. To conclude this transformation, it's time to lock in the most powerful shift of all. The move from internalization to embodiment, from knowing like a student to moving like a master, from aspiring to act like a billionaire to becoming a person who cannot think any other way. Because the final form of billionaire thinking is not just in books, podcasts, blueprints, or rituals, but in the deep rewiring of your mental, emotional, and behavioral software, so that discipline becomes identity, vision becomes instinct, and impact becomes inevitable. The real billionaire never asks, how do I stay motivated? Because the mission itself has fused with their purpose so deeply that movement becomes as natural as breathing. No longer triggered by panic, fear, or ego, but guided by clarity, responsibility, and contribution. And this final chapter is about becoming that person. Not someday when the bank balance changes or followers increase, but now when conditions are imperfect, when uncertainty remains, when doubts whisper louder than applause, because that's when most people retreat. And that's when future billionaires rise, act, and define their story. Let's begin by anchoring your transformation in what billionaires value above almost all else. Clarity of identity, because the more success you build, the more noise will surround you. More people offering advice, more options demanding attention, more opportunities dressed as distractions, and your only compass in that chaos will be your self-definition. Who you are, what you stand for, what your life means, and what you're here to build. So write it down. Not just your goals, but your code. I am a creator of value. I do hard things. I keep promises. I take full ownership. I seek truth. I move with purpose. I lead by example. These aren't affirmations. They're non-negotiable traits of the billionaire operating system, and they must become your spiritual armor, worn every day before you touch your phone, speak your mission, or take on the world. Now lock in the second principle. Inevitability thinking, the belief that your success is not a matter of if, but when, and that every decision you make either shortens or extends the timeline between now and your inevitable outcome. This belief eliminates panic, kills comparison, and installs a level of calm execution most people will never know because you've already decided. This will happen, the company will grow, the wealth will build, the body will transform, the brand will expand, the legacy will rise, and your job is to keep stacking aligned action until the result reveals itself. This is how billionaires protect mental bandwidth. They don't emotionally negotiate with outcomes, they assume them and simply reverse engineer the execution. Now bring in energy architecture, the overlooked billionaire secret, because billionaires don't just manage time. They manage states, knowing that the quality of their mind, mood, body, and attention determines the quality of every deal, decision, and dollar they touch. That's why they obsess over sleep, food, movement, recovery, rituals, and environment. Not to be perfect, but to protect their most valuable resource. The mind that makes millions. So if you want to scale like them, upgrade your nervous system. Cut fake dopamine, protect deep. Focus, use breathwork to reset, walk before you decide, sweat daily, say no quickly, take solo time, and design your mornings like launch pads, not snooze loops. Energy is no longer a bonus. It's your billionaire fuel. Next is courageous decision-making, because the road ahead will demand brutal clarity and uncomfortable moves. Walking away from what's good to build what's great, letting go of people who slow your climb, saying yes before you feel ready, betting on the long game when others are, selling out early and daring to launch ideas before they're perfect. And billionaires build this courage not by avoiding fear but by facing it often, making fear their training ground, uncertainty their feedback loop, and risk their spiritual gym. Every scary move you avoid is a future version of you stuck in neutral, so ask yourself daily, what am I avoiding that would double my growth if I did it this week? Then do it. Fear shrinks in motion. Now integrate relentless iteration, the DNA of every scalable legacy, because billionaires never expect perfection at first launch. They ship, study, and sharpen endlessly, treating every product, brand, conversation, system, or campaign like clay, molded, refined, evolved, and compounded with each cycle. This is how Amazon went from selling books to powering the internet, how YouTube went from video dating to global content engine, how Tesla went from ugly prototypes to industry revolution, and how you will grow your work if you stop needing it to be perfect before it's public. Feedback is your co-founder, failure is your GPS, and revision is your secret weapon. Now infuse multiplicative thinking into your strategy, the mindset of not doing more, but creating things that do more for you, because billionaires don't just work, they build leverage. Teams that build, products that sell, systems that scale, assets that appreciate, platforms that distribute, audiences that multiply impact. And your focus must shift from doing everything to architecting machines that work when you don't. This means documenting everything, delegating early, building digital assets, creating evergreen content, reinvesting wisely, and always asking, how can this create value 10x beyond the time it takes? Because leverage is what buys your time back so you can dream bigger and serve deeper. Now let's fold in public identity alignment, the skill of curating your online and offline presence to reflect your values, mission, and voice, because billionaires understand the power of narrative. The stories others tell about you, the stories you tell about yourself, and the consistency between the two. This is not about ego or vanity. It's about strategic clarity so you become referable, trustable, investable, and recognizable for the impact you're building. Write your origin story, refine your brand pillars, choose your platforms, speak consistently, show your face, share your lessons, and become known for something specific before trying to be everything. Because reputation, when earned with integrity, becomes your biggest accelerator. And finally, install the last pillar of billionaire embodiment. Daily legacy alignment, the ritual of ending each day by asking, did I live in a way today that moves my mission forward, serves people better, sharpens my vision, and protects my peace? Because what you do repeatedly becomes what you're remembered for, and legacy is not built in one viral moment, one book, one exit, or one award. It's built daily, in invisible moments of discipline, sacrifice, generosity, humility, focus, and truth-telling. You are no longer allowed to drift through days. You now walk with intent, speak with precision, love with depth, create with boldness, and lead with example, because every hour you operate with alignment is an hour your empire rises. Your audience expands, your freedom multiplies, and your future self smiles. So from this point on, there is no going back. You've unlocked the blueprint, downloaded the mindset, assembled the tools, faced the fears, and accepted the truth. That you are already worthy, already powerful, already equipped to build a life so impactful, abundant, and unrecognizable that the world will ask how you did it, and you'll tell them. I stopped thinking small, I started thinking like a billionaire, even when I was broke, and I never stopped building from that place forward.